Hey, good evening, YouTube. In my Eyewitness series, we talked about Katrina and the lessons learned from that disaster, especially what happens when the good people are disarmed. I've always encouraged people to be armed and, as part of that, to be proficient with your firearms. I want you to know weapons safety and to have some firearms training. You need to do more than watch a video, though. You really need to get out to the range and do some shooting. But that's not what I want to talk to you about today. What I'm going to say is going to make some people furious, but I also tell it like it is, folks, because I don't want you to suffer. Far from it. I want you to have a beautiful and rich and full life. So please, pay close attention to what I'm going to tell you, please. I want to talk to you about a friend of mine who used his weapon on a man who was breaking into his house. He shot him. My friend's name is Greg. I won't give his last name for obvious reasons, but Greg and I were in the LRP unit together back in the 80s, and he worked full-time for the military in his particular MOS. I'll talk more about Greg and the shooting in a minute, though. My friends, there may come a time when you must use violence to stop evil. It's the only force that evil will respect, the only force that evil will obey. While I preach and teach we should be kind and hold malice toward no man, you must understand there are some truly dangerous and evil people out there who will do you great bodily harm if they can get away with it. Not all evil people are cowards, but many are. Just the idea that you're armed and prepared to defend yourself with those arms is usually enough for the coward to run them away. Some are not cowards, though, and for various reasons. In combat, I've dealt with evil cowards, and I've also fought evil but brave men who were not afraid to die for what they believed in. I consider them evil because they were trying to kill me, and I imagine they probably viewed me the same. I didn't bother to ask. I just presumed those 7.62 by 39 rounds whistling by me weren't love notes. Thank God marksmanship was not in their skill set. In either event, if we are going to do anything, we should do it right. In a tactical or combat situation where you must defend yourself, you need to rid yourself of the idea that partial measures and half steps will suffice. You do not have the luxury of picking whom you prefer to attack you or try to harm you. If that were the case, I would like it to be a big paper target that would hold still. It won't be, though, so I need to spend some time practicing and doing some training. It is incumbent on us to have this mindset then. I will avoid this if possible. I will give you no reason or cause to attack or harm me or my family. However, if you do choose this course of action, you will lose before you even know it has started. If you're going to use a firearm to defend yourself, you must make a decision. You must decide that you are going to fight and that you are going to fight to win. And that begins not just when the weapon's drawn from the holster. It begins now. It begins in your training. Are you going to train with the resolve to win, or are you going to half-step? If you half-step, you might as well not bother. That's just my opinion. A soldier who's been to war and seen what happens when you don't prepare fully. Winning means a lot more than just putting holes in your target, though. It also means not getting holes put in you. That's obvious, I hope. For today, though, we will need to look at an additional aspect of winning, especially in a localized or mini-raw or pre-raw situation. That's where there's going to be courts later on. Something like a hurricane, for instance. Winning also means you won't go to prison and get a felony conviction. It's not about how you or I interpret the law, you see. It's not about how some people on a forum or blog want to interpret it either. It's not so much that as how a jury of your peers will interpret the law, sort of, although they will be second-guessing you. That's not it either. It's all about how your district attorney interprets the law. I hear people all the time playing lawyer, trying to cleverly read the laws regarding the use of deadly force with the assumption that the entire judicial system will slap them on the back for shooting down a bad man. Like you're going to get in front of someone with a law degree, hundreds if not thousands of court cases under their belt, many of which they have won successfully, and pin them to the mat with your clever and witty analysis on the law. I'm sorry, but I can tell you, as can any cop out there as well, that this is not how it works in the courthouse, which is most likely where you will be standing when you use deadly force, regardless of how justified the case may be. If your use of deadly force lines up perfectly with how the DA interprets the law, you are basically clear, at least in criminal court. The only possible thing to worry about then might be a civil suit. If Zimmerman manages to beat the rap in a criminal court, I'm afraid the family of Trayvon has already got plans to take him to civil court. The chances of winning in both are slim to none. His case isn't going to be tried on Fox News or by Rush Limbaugh. His case will be tried in a court by and with a DA. District attorneys, or DAs, are elected officials. Underline that word and remember it. Does this help give you a perspective on where their motivation may lie? Look at the demographics in your town sometime. You may be in a pro-gun state, but an anti-gun city. You may be in a pro-gun state and city, but your jury may be mostly anti-gun, or at least non-pro-gun individuals. If you wind up in court, you want to win, and you will not win by having a clever interpretation of the law you got from some blog. Don't count on that jury of your peers all being of like mind with you either. Now, let's talk about Greg's story, and it's very sad. Greg was sitting in his living room one day and he heard a noise. He stuck his head out the window and saw a man climbing into another window on his house, just 20 feet away from where he sat. He picked up his Walther 380, leaned out the window, and shot the man as he was halfway in the house. The round hit the perpetrator in the left butt cheek. The man fell back out the window and ran away. Greg called the cops. So did the would-be burglar. The police showed up and Greg told them what he had done. Guy's breaking in my house, I shot him. The police took his statement and his weapon. Shortly after this, the DA informed him that he was going to be charged with attempted murder. Greg argued the facts. The facts did not line up, however, with what was allowable in the state. Greg had heard that you could shoot someone breaking into your home, you see. The law said yes, but they had to be all the way inside the threshold of your home during the day. Hanging halfway out the window did not quite meet their criteria. Further, there were other criteria which he also failed to meet. At the time in Texas, you could do what he did only at night, and even then with certain restrictions. You see, folks, most people only know one or two of the criteria, and as such, they have this idea that they can play games with the intent of the law. Someone on your property stealing your lawn furniture equals trespassing with criminal intent to them, and you can just walk over and shoot them. Wrong. Even if they drop the furniture and run or tell you to go to hell, or you don't just get to blast away. Sorry, but none of that will fly. The law was intended for self-defense, not for you to shoot people who anger you by trespassing and stealing. You have to read the entire law, not just the part that justifies what you want to do. Now, there may be caveats on the stealing part. I understand. I got it. But please understand that overall, the way the DA and the jury are going to look at it is not the way that you want to interpret it. All right. I wish I had a nickel for every barroom advisor who said, yeah, that's right. Your buddy should have just drug him back in the house after he shot him. Well, okay. Dragging a dead body leaves a blood trail. That's what they call forensic evidence. That's the kind of evidence they allow in court, the kind they used to send you to jail for murder and for attempting to cover it up, too. Not a good idea, but go ahead and listen to Mr. Drag 'em Inside if you want. You don't have to be a forensic expert to know that somebody who just shot is probably leaving blood trail. The cop that shows up to respond to the call may have an NRA tattoo and think that what you just did is better than a hot dog at a football game. But in the end, he isn't going to go to prison for tampering with evidence for you. He's not going to tamper with a crime scene for you, and he's not going to commit conspiracy to obstruct justice for you. I'm sorry. He is also an employee of the city, the county, or the state. He will also have to testify about anything you tell him. In fact, he will have to do so under oath. He may think that what you did is awesome and want to buy you a gun so you can shoot better next time, and only wish more people did what you did. But in the end, he has to say exactly what you told him and exactly what he saw when he got there. In court, it will be you having to justify what you did in light of the law, but again, remember, not your interpretation of the law, but rather the DA's interpretation that matters. If they think you broke the law, they will attempt to prosecute you. They have deep pockets to mount a campaign against you. Do you? No, not as deep as theirs, especially if what you did is volatile, especially if it is questionable or borderline, especially if their constituents are screaming for your blood. The DA will do their own preliminary investigation of the facts. Let's look at what the DA had in front of her regarding Greg's case. First of all, Greg had shot a man and confessed that he had done it. Second, Greg had given the police the weapon. These two together substantiated that he had used that weapon to shoot the guy. No argument about it. The police call and response time indicated that the man was shot during daylight hours. The man was also still outside the home, per Greg's confession, which the police witnessed and took from him. Even though he was attempting to gain access and was halfway in, even if he had been 99.9% of the way in, the law read they had to be fully across the threshold during daylight hours. He was not. Greg was also in a Ranger and LRP unit. That was going to bite him hard, because Greg had also used a semi-automatic military-style Walther PPK weapon. Greg, don't jump off on that yet. Just wait, okay? Just wait before you start sending messages. Just wait. Greg did not retain counsel, which made him an easy target. Greg was a sitting duck. The DA was in the city of Houston and relied heavily upon the Latino vote and a lot of anti-gunners as well. The shooting victim was a Latino male. Greg thought he was on solid ground, that his military status and the fact that he had been in trouble never before would help him. The DA, however, used all this against him. She painted him out to be a gun-crazy sociopath who owned several firearms, which he did, a member of an elite military unit trained to kill, an expert. She wanted a conviction to bolster her chances of re-election, since many of her constituents, as I mentioned, were rabidly anti-gun, and also there were Hispanics. This was the perfect case for her career, and she took a personal interest in it. The jury found Greg guilty, and he received a felony conviction with a probated 5-year sentence and a $25,000 fine. Now, a felony conviction cost him his top secret security clearance, which in turn cost him his job. Unemployed and with a felony conviction now over his head, he could not get another good job, and any money he did make went largely to pay off the $25,000 fine. He also lost the house that he was in. It was partially, he shared part of it with some of his other relatives, and in the end, he wound up losing what he owned on that as well. He lost everything. Don't pay the fine, by the way. Some of you are saying, well, I ain't paying that. Well, okay, you're in violation. This is not like defaulting on a car note, people. It's like not paying a traffic ticket on steroids. If you think they're going to let you slide on a traffic ticket, they just keep jacking the price up and doubling it. Imagine what it's like when you don't pay a $25,000 fine. At some point, there's a profit motive in coming and arresting you and seizing all your property. I'm just saying. Greg's life was ruined. It broke my heart. He was an outstanding soldier. He was a good man. He's a hard worker. He was ruined because of one incident in his life. I don't want to second guess my friend, and I am hopeful that he has not just gone past this, but has gone on to live a beautiful life. I really do. Because he was a genius. He was an innovative thinker. He was an extremely intelligent man. I do, however, want us to look at what happened pragmatically, and I think he would want us to do that, to learn from this, because he wouldn't want to see anyone else have happened, the same thing happen to them. After the shooting, I wrote the DA for the state of Texas, who was Johnny Holmes at that time, and I asked him for a copy of his interpretation of the laws regarding the firearms in the state of Texas, handguns especially. His office gladly and politely responded and sent me a really nice red-jacketed brochure. It's about 15 pages, I guess, and I carried that with me. It's very durable. It was in my briefcase with my 45 long slide. It was, in it clearly listed the DA's interpretation of the state law, which was clear, straightforward, and unambiguous. Not only was the use of deadly force clearly explained and outlined in plain English, it also covered the law regarding the transport of firearms when traveling, concealed carry, this was before the CCW permit revolution, and the legal way to transport your weapons. The state had very generous provisions that underlined our right to self-defense. That's a God-given right, by the way. Okay, that's not granted to you by government. That's a God-given right. And it's codified in our Second Amendment, which doesn't grant you the right. It just guarantees that the government is going to guarantee it, or should. The state had very generous provisions that underlined our right. And more importantly was clarification on when the DA for the state interpreted self-defense and when he said something was not. And that's where you really need to pay attention. And you need to get a hold of this kind of document from your state and your elected officials. Defining self-defense is the heart of the matter, I believe. Remember, not your opinion or mine, but the DA's opinion. Some do not understand that shooting a person, hold on a second. Some do not understand that shooting a person we have judged to be doing something wrong or criminal does not automatically make us the good guy and them the bad, even though in our mind it does. Rather, it is about the circumstances around the shooting. Does it clearly indicate that you are defending yourself? Think about it carefully, because your opinion will be duly noted and will not matter one whit in court. In Texas, the key words were at the time "in fear of your life," and a reasonable person could not have retreated from the situation. After that, key words were "in your home" during the day and "to the limits of your property" at night. But again, the "in fear of your life" and "reasonable person could not have retreated" part were also applicable. Think of these things as even though this is past history, we're going to apply them to Greg's case. Okay, and you can start to see, wow, he didn't follow a lot of these. And we'll talk about that in a minute. You see, during the day, the police want you to call them if you see shenanigans on your property. There was a provision that if they were stealing something of irreplaceable value, and that's an ambiguous and subjective term, by the way, that will be up for interpretation not by you, but by the jury or the DA. Something like your tool truck that you use to make your living. You could confront and use deadly force to prevent the theft. If, however, it was something like your lawn furniture, or more importantly, something the jury or the DA or both determined was not of irreplaceable value, you're cooked. For instance, remember, this is just state of Texas laws. You need to find out your own state's laws, and I'm not going to do a video on every state. Oh man, I'll be here the rest of my life trying to cover that. I want you to do your own homework, please. Find out what it is and know what it is. For instance, if someone were to jump you on your property at night and start trying to kill you, you couldn't run away. Or if turning your back puts you at greater risk, for instance, a reasonable person could not retreat, and they did not stand down, you could use deadly force. Keep in mind that your story will be gone over with careful scrutiny, and if it doesn't smell right, the jury will fry you. Your plea of not guilty is not like a vote. The only votes that count are the jury's. Greg did not know the DA's interpretation of the law. Greg said later that had he known this, had he known what was going to happen, he would have simply fired into the air and shouted at the man, or closed the window and let him steal everything, but he didn't. His training kicked in. Soldiers are not trained to make warning shots. However, if he had let the man get all the way in the house and shot him and been covered by the law, criminal law, the man still could have taken him to civil court. You say, okay, then shoot to kill. I say the man has family. Just keep that in mind if you're shooting him because you are angry and think you can get away with it. If, however, you are truly in fear of your life and you meet all the provisions of the law, by all means, shoot to kill if necessary. I must caveat this, that if you shoot, don't stand over the body and pump some extra rounds into him, because a jury of your peers will turn this against you. The second thing he did wrong was he talked to the police. Look, the police aren't the enemy, but they are employees of the government, and they're sworn to an oath. They will not be able to advise you, cover for you, or conveniently omit facts on your behalf, even though they may want to. A better course of action would be to say you would rather not speak, that you're too upset, you're too distraught. It's also advisable that when you call the police, you also call for an ambulance. You may even want to try and render some first aid. You do this, and the jury will most likely see you as a human being that was set upon, the good guy. Conversely, if they show up and you're gloating, you're pumped up on adrenaline, and this happens with people, by the way. Police officers tell me this is exactly what they see happen, and they want the guy to shut up because they really want to be on the guy's side, but they have to write down everything you say, and it will be used in the court of law against you. So if you're pumped up and you're strutting around and boasting about your confirmed kill, you're either cutting his ear off to put in your hat or something, and you offer to show your gun collection, a jury of your peers will determine you probably lured the man into your home for the purpose of executing him. I'm just saying. The third thing he did wrong possibly was to shoot him with a military-style weapon. Now, before you flip out, hold on. Okay, hold on. Although on its own, that's not a bad thing. Coupled with his military background, though, okay, that ranger scroll is what did him in, man. I'm telling you, it shocked everybody too in the unit, but it did. Using that with the ranger scroll, all there together, it sunk him. So if you got a military background with mine, I need to use a pink wiffle ball bat if anybody gets into my house. In Greg's case, the DA was pandering to her voting base, and she got a lot of political support over frying my friend. She painted him out as a professional elite killer who was clearly attacking innocent Latino people because they were brown, and he was probably racist. That's funny, not funny, because Greg, I think, had a black girlfriend, if I recall. And I don't think that qualifies him in that regard for the DA's hate list. But keep in mind the DA wasn't concerned, and they usually aren't, with truth or only even winning. Sorry to be so crass, but that is how it is sometimes. A better idea would have been to shoot him with something that looks like a hunting weapon. I can hear all the idealists saying, but the right to keep on and bear arms shall not be infringed, etc. Roger, I got it. But you have to learn a few things about how to fight a cause and how to fight a battle. Okay, if you fight every battle as a cause, you're going to lose most of the time, especially on this one. Look, you're not going to be judged by the NRA, me, and the Haas USMC. If so, you'd be good to go. You are going to be judged by people who didn't have anything better to do than serve on a jury. When you're in court and they lay that AR carbine with folding stock, ACOG foregrip, laser pointer light, 30-round magazine, and tactical sling on the bench in front of the jury, how do you think Mr. or Mrs. "Oh my God, it's a gun, run for your life" are going to react? Juxtapose that with laying a hunting shotgun or a revolver in front of them. They won't know you shot them with a slug at point blank range. They won't even know what a slug is. Even if you have all your ducks in a row and it was a justifiable shooting, the family or survivor themselves will simply take you to civil court where Mr. and Mrs. "Oh my God, it's a gun, run for your life" will determine you are a paramilitary psycho who is bent on murder and mayhem. Their attorney won't have your best interests at heart either, folks. And attorneys are not sworn to the truth. They're sworn to represent their client to the best of their ability. That's it. That's their oath. It doesn't matter who you ruin in the process with them. It's all about winning. I have a shotgun at home for the purpose of pre-roll intruders, though where I live in Maine, I am seriously more worried about a bear getting into the kitchen than I am about a human being. Most people lock their door with a butter knife. It's that remote out there. And if you're not from around here, people start wondering what you're doing here about the time you get within an hour of town. It's that small place. Okay, so no strangers wandering around is what I'm saying. You can go ahead and use combat weapon, and that's fine. Just keep in mind where it may wind up, on a bench in front of the jury. Greg's final mistake was to not retain adequate counsel. It totally sucks to have to pay an attorney big bucks to defend you when you did nothing wrong. And it's kind of a racket in there too, by the way. You want to represent yourself? Well, you're cutting into their game, man. And they're going to make an example out of you. I'm just saying. Okay, if you use a court-appointed attorney, keep a few things in mind here. For one thing, they are usually very junior and inexperienced. They're right out of law school. Think of the DA as a professional boxer like Mike Tyson, and your counsel is a little high school 90-pound weakling. The term carnage comes to my mind. Also know that she does not want to make an enemy of the DA. If the DA wants a win bad enough, they may trade you off as a sacrificial lamb for a favor in exchange for future employment or future favors from the DA, who's a powerful person. Court-appointed attorneys sometimes don't care about kissing the DA's toes, and they're very principled. Those tend to be the very young ones. After they get beat down a few times, they start learning to play along, to get along. If you find yourself being dragged into court, you can look at it like this. Either pay the $25,000 now and walk, or pay the $25,000 along with a felony conviction later on. Or better yet, how about we all learn from Greg's example and his mistake, and I think he'd want us to, and we be forewarned, because as they say, forewarned is forearmed. Folks, this has been the Maine Prepper. I'm sorry it wasn't a cheerful, bright, and positive message, but I think you really need to know this because I'm seeing people arming themselves, which is awesome. Go team. But I want you to be careful. I don't want this to be something that ruins your life when you do something that's your God-given right. So please find out what the DA's, this is the takeaway from this, find out what your DA's interpretation is on the use of deadly force and firearms in defending yourself, and then you can tailor your defensive strategy for your property and your home accordingly. If you don't do that, you're going to wind up like Greg, you're going to wind up like Zimmerman, you're going to wind up broke or in jail or in both. All right. Thank you, folks. This has been the Maine Prepper. It's always a pleasure to have you over. There is no preliminaries on the front or the back of this video, so when I say goodnight, that's it.